minutes to see, or I should say first, welcome to our webinar, How to Generate Free Publicity, and I'm going to tell you all about it. But we're just going to wait a couple of minutes just to check that we've got everyone that wants to attend. And in the meantime, in the chat box, I've got Karina with me who'll be kind of, not adjudicating, what's the word, facilitating. So in the chat box, it would be great if you said hi. And if you've got any questions during the course of the webinar, just stick them in there and Karina will be chatting with you. Hi, Anna. You're the first. Well done. Anyone else want to say hi to me? Okay. Right. Well, we've got a bit to go through. Oh, and thank you, Karina. Hi. And everyone else is being shy. All right. So I am going to tell you today how to generate free publicity for your business, which I'm very excited to tell you about. I will show you my face at the end so you know I'm real, but I am here. And if you've got any questions, as I said, about what I'm talking about, or any questions that you've got in general about your own business or about publicity, stick them in the chat box and I will do a Q&A at the end so that I'll run through them at the end unless it's sort of particularly pertinent to what we're talking about at the moment. So firstly, I thought I would tell you a little bit about me, just so that you know, with me, with my pink hair, which is a recent thing, it goes in and out. Sometimes I'm blonde, sometimes I'm pink. I have been working in PR since 2003, which is when I founded my PR agency called Handle Communications. At Handle, we've worked very closely with a lot of mumpreneurs, entrepreneurs, and startups and small businesses in general. And I absolutely loved it. But we found around the time of the GFC that a lot of people couldn't afford to pay agency fees. A little bit more in a minute. I'd like you to introduce yourselves. So can you do a quick post in the group chat window telling us what your company name is and what industry you're in? And I guess just because I'm nosy, I'd love to know where people are calling from or calling in from. And if you know who your target market is, let me know that too. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to put some questions in to do that. Okay. So, sorry, there's a little bit of a lag between my talking and the window, so I will just wait a couple more minutes and then I'm going to plow on with it. Or a sculptor, or that you might just have a new product or service or just be interested in learning about PR, you're in the right place. Now, before we get started, just in case anyone is having any technical issues, we suggest you turn off your mobile phone just so that you don't get any calls during the course of it, but also that can disrupt sometimes the I don't know what the word is for it, the platform thing. Switch off any email so you don't get email and things popping up, and set aside the next hour to hour and a half. Grab a pen and a notepad and sit back, learn and enjoy. I'm going to tell you a whole lot. But first, I thought I would tell you a little bit about me. I'm just going to run through this very quickly, but it's just to give you a little bit of background. I am from Melbourne originally. Well, actually, I'm from Ireland originally, but I moved to Melbourne when I was 12 and I've lived here pretty much ever since, other than a short stint when I worked in London for 4 or 5 years. And actually, if you look at that bus number 94, I worked in the room on the top floor above it in Regent Street selling ads for magazines for a year or so. Then I moved back to Sydney and I worked in Sydney for a couple of years through the year 2000 and the Olympics, which was lots and lots of fun. And then I moved back to good old Melbourne because I do love Melbourne very much. As I said, I've been a PR professional since 2003, and I've worked one-on-one with lots and lots of clients. I absolutely love what I do, and I really love helping my clients get their stories published in the media, and which is, of course, why now I want to help you get your stories published in the media. I've seen the huge impact PR can make to business and its potential. The thing that was stopping people from using PR, and it was really the reason, as I said, that we set up the business, was that it can be very expensive, particularly if you're in a small business or a startup, to be paying $2,500 to $4,000 a month to get someone to do it for you. So there is a perception that only big companies can afford PR agencies. And that's actually not the truth. As long as you know the skills for how to do PR, you can do it yourself, and journalists will be just as receptive to hearing from you as they would be from a PR company. It's all about the story as far as they're concerned. But first, I've got a couple of poll questions for you. Now, Karina, are you putting up a little doodad for the polls, or should you want me to just ask questions and people? Okay, so I'm just going to ask you questions. If you can put them in the chat box, that would be great. I'm really interested to know, have any of you ever had any publicity for your business or product? And if the answer is no, do you know what the reason why? You know, why is it that you haven't? And if and how positive that can be for your business. So I'm just going to charge on. Hang on, I've jumped a slide. Okay. So although Handle Your Own PR started in 2009, it took us a while to realise we had more to offer than just ebooks and media contact lists and media release writing and the tools. So in 2013, we had a massive shift in our vision, and we decided that Handle Your Own PR should become a lot more active in the area of PR education, which is something that I absolutely love to do, teaching people how to do it. These are just some daggy photos of me and Karina and various other people at events where I've spoken or done little trade shows. As you probably are aware, that is our website at the moment, which is our third iteration of it, and I'm about to start briefing out another change. But we're continually improving because our vision is to help small businesses get as much publicity as possible. And I really want to make it as easy as for people as possible to access the information that you need to know. But the core of our business, since we set it up in 2009, has never changed. We want to be a global leader in do-it-yourself PR for small to medium-sized businesses. And that has been the same all the way through. We still, even though we are moving further into the education sort of side of things, we still sell lots and lots of media contact lists. In fact, I've got under coaching that, you know, I'm also selling time that people can spend with me to talk about their own business. Anyway, moving on. So I still teach entrepreneurs and business groups, which I love the opportunity to do whenever I possibly can. But I particularly love it when my clients succeed. And as I cracked a joke the other night, which is totally true, I also love champagne, which is always a good excuse when you get a win. So enough about me. What are we going to cover off today? Well, I'm going to take you through what PR actually is. Then I'm going to give you some insights into the media, and then the steps required to run your own PR campaign. And then we'll have some time, as I said, at the end for a bit of a Q&A. So I've got another question for you first. What do you think PR is? Can you write that in the chat box? I'm really interested to see whether you know what PR is. I guess actually thinking about it, that if a lot of you have already done it, you're probably very aware of what it is. Oh, I see, it ended up not being a massive split. 60% of you have had publicity and 40% of you haven't. But anyway, yeah, let me know what you think PR is. Okay, about what you do and the value. Yep, that's exactly it, Chris. And Deborah's saying media, social media. Yes, it's unpaid advertising is one way of looking at it. And Anna says building relationships and awareness with the public and other industry contacts to essentially grow your business. Yes. And Beck, who I saw this morning, welcome Beck, says publicity of your key messages to your targeted audience. So all of those are pretty much correct. I'm going to give you I'm just going to show you now a great little diagram I love, which I guess is telling you what the difference is between PR and advertising, because certainly for many years I had no idea what PR really meant. So, and I think this is just such a beautiful example. So an ad is basically when you are paying for some space in a media outlet to say, aren't I great, or isn't my product great? And it's you blowing your own trumpet. The difference with public relations is that it's somebody else saying that you're a great company. So it's the editor, or it's the radio presenter, or it's the TV presenter, or the journalist just saying this is a great company. And you know, all of you will know how powerful it is. The difference between seeing an ad somewhere and one of your friends telling you, basically, or someone that you trust telling you that a product or a service is really good. So it's that extra, it's a third party telling everyone or endorsing your business, which is just so much more powerful. So if you've set aside a small budget for advertising, why wouldn't you consider PR instead? You get a lot more bang for your buck. As content for them to publish. It's always free. You don't have to pay for it at all. The only cost is really your time. But, and I guess there's always a but, you can't always control when it will appear. So it's not like advertising that if you're launching your business on the 8th of March, you can book an ad for the 8th or 9th of March and know it will appear. It's not quite that simple. But but there are tricks and tips that you can look at to try and make sure that the story appears roughly around when you want it to appear. And certainly you can ask journalists, depending on when the outlet is, but I'm going to get into some of that during the course today. So if you buy an ad, but I'm interested to talk about this difference between advertising and publicity. If you just buy an ad or two, what do you do when the money runs out? So say you've only got $1,000 or a couple of $1,000 to present, to promote your business, then advertising really is going to be quite limiting because it costs so much and you really need as many ads as you can to try and get cut through. If you learn how to run your own PR campaign instead, then you can repeat the exercise time and time again. You can build up a relationship with the media that you target, and they might even start to contact you, because that does happen. Once they know about you and they know what it is that you do, they may well come back to you for more comments or products to feature or whatever. And wouldn't that be nice? So that's really why I'm such a strong advocate for people learning how to do their own PR, because it's a bit like that idea of don't give someone a fish, teach them how to fish, and then they'll be able to do it for the rest of their lives. So this will be a skill that you'll then be able to apply over the next few years as your business. Is much more believable your business is being endorsed. And after all, let's be honest, people buy magazines and newspapers and watch TV shows, etc., not for the ads, they're doing it for the stories. And the same's for TV and radio. So that's really what they're looking at, the content. The ads are secondary. And of course, the beautiful thing about why you would use PR is that it's free. You don't pay the media outlet for the coverage. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little example now. I love this story. These were two great women that came to me a couple of years ago. They had almost no money by the time they opened their doors. So they thought about doing some DIY PR to create awareness for their business. They had a female escort agency, and it was just so hilarious. I hadn't even thought about why they would be doing publicity or even setting up a business like that. But it was around the time that Ashley Madison, you know, the website where married people can have affairs, which all blew up this year, came out. And I think that they thought, well, you know, why is it just the blokes that get it? Why can't we do something for the women? So they came to me and we put together a media release for them, and we suggested an angle that they ended up using, which was two Melbourne mums take on the sex industry. Because the other thing about these women was they didn't want anyone to know their name. They literally are mums who live in the burbs, and they wanted to create awareness for their business, but without getting their name in the media as well. So as you can imagine, it was quite a hard story to sell, partly for the subject matter and partly because they didn't really want to be interviewed or be named. So initially they approached the women's and everyone. But then they approached Grazia magazine, and Grazia magazine, for anyone who doesn't know, is a beautiful glossy women's magazine that closed down a year or so ago. That used to do all sorts of interesting stories, and Grazia absolutely loved it. And they ended up getting a 3-page story, which was worth about $18,000 if they had to buy it as advertising space. And I mean, I just loved it, Men for Sale. I mean, it was just a great story. They were so thrilled, and their business has been booming ever since. So there's just a little bit of an anecdote about a business that it's been really successful for. So now I'm going to run you through the skills that you need in order to be able to do your own publicity. And the first one, of course, is that you need to have some reasonable writing skills. And I guess you've got to think about it. Journalists spend all their time writing. So they're pretty attuned to it, and they really hate, as do I have to say, bad grammar, bad spelling. So you really need to be good at grammar and spelling. And if you're not, or you think your writing skills aren't up to scratch, then you can easily pay someone to write a good media release for you. There's loads of places online, and we actually do that on our website as well. The other thing you need is an approachable phone manner, mainly because journalists may want to come back to you to ask further questions on the phone, or even to do a formal interview with you. Having said that, if you feel really uncomfortable about it, then you just need to find someone that can talk on your behalf. So it just needs to be someone who's slightly relevant to the business, who can answer the questions that the journalist would be asking. I'm going to give you another little case study because I love this one too. Excuse me. All the stuff from your wedding. What do we do with it afterwards? Well, you know, sometimes we wrap our wedding dress up in tissue paper and put it under the bed. But other than that, what do you do with it all? So she thought, well, people could sell it on my website and other people can buy it for their weddings. And of course, that's a great fit for handle your own PR as well. DIY weddings being promoted by DIY PR. So she'd never done PR before, but she was very clear that she wanted to get on TV, onto those women's shows. And so she bought the TV producers media contact list that we have, which is mainly focused, I have to say, it's not a lot of contacts, but they're real beauties. And it's all mainly focused on the morning shows. And I think the project is on there as well. And she was absolutely wrapped. She managed to get a big segment on mornings on Channel 9. And she also had huge interest from the studio on Channel 10, Weekend Today, and the project. So she's a huge, and every time I see her at an event or anything, she's always running up to me saying, oh my God, you know, I love it, and it's getting great interest Yeah, she loves PR. So she's a huge fan, and her business as well is booming. So enough about previous customers. Now it's time to get to the nitty gritty. And now I'm kind of moving into class mode. So the first thing that I want to do is give you some media insights and talk about different media types. So there are a whole lot of different types. You probably know the first four, and they're very obvious. So TV, if you're approaching TV, then you really need to have a visual angle or a person to be interviewed. So do keep that in mind. If you haven't got anything to show and there's nothing that can be demonstrated, then TV isn't probably the best option for you. Video to readers, or if you have a genuinely interesting story that could be a feature story. Newspapers, the same, but I guess with newspapers it needs to be sort of in inverted commas kind of newsworthy, and often there needs to be a local angle. And when I say local, I'm not talking local papers. I'm talking, if you were to go in the Herald Sun, then you'd really want to be a Victorian and ideally a Melbourne-based business. If you live in Brisbane, then you'd go to the Courier Mail. If you're in WA, you might go to the West Australian, etc., etc. So it's from that perspective that they do national stories, but you're in with a pretty good bet if you can say, I live in Melbourne and this is of interest, or my service is of interest to Melburnians. The next one is bloggers, and you're probably aware of them, but they have only really been around for, I guess, the last sort of 5 to 8 years in any big way. But a lot of journalists now, as newspapers and magazines have been closing down, have moved into blogging. And there are blogs out there with really big followings. So those are the ones that you want to target, the ones that have a decent amount of followers. And other than that, you kind of treat them just like journalists. You send them the media release, you try and engage them via email or phone, although most bloggers it's via email, and then they'll write a story for you. And last but not least, and definitely not one to be discounted, is email newsletters and industry media. So that might be, if you're targeting teachers, perhaps that's sort of, Teachers Weekly or Teachers Monthly. In most industries, there is an industry body who puts out a newsletter. They are sending that out to a highly targeted audience. And if you are trying to get to that audience, then a newsletter can be a great way to do it. And the other thing is that often newsletters are put together by people in the industry and they're desperate for content. So if you can provide them with a story, they're going to be very, very happy to hear from you. And industry media, again, if you want to go into the retail industry, then there's Retail World and Inside Retail. If you wanted to go to banking, there's Bankers Weekly, etc., etc. So depending on what industry you're targeting, they can be a really good way to get to them. They might have smaller numbers that they send it to, but you might get a much better response because it's so highly targeted. So the other thing to think about with the media is that publicity is slightly different to advertising in that people, it's not actually relevant to advertising at all. Different media work to different lead times. So some of them are working a long way ahead and some of them are working and it's pretty immediate. And the only reason that you need to know that is if you are pitching an article to a bi-monthly magazine and they love it, they might say, okay, we're going to put it in the next issue. But you need to be aware that the next issue is maybe 6 months away. So they might be that people tend to work quite far ahead. So I just thought I'd run through these very quickly with you. Obviously, blogs, websites, social media platforms, all are pretty immediate. If they like it, they might put it up the same day. With daily newspapers, they tend to work between a day and a half ahead. Sorry, a week to a week and a week. What am I talking about? Daily newspapers, yeah, they tend to work between a day and a week ahead. Often it'll be within a couple of days that they'll run your story. If you're targeting weekend newspapers, then they're probably working a week ahead. But then again, it can be pretty immediate. Weekly newspapers, including local newspapers, tend to work 1 to 2 weeks ahead. So, I mean, look, with my local papers, I know in my local area, they go to print every Thursday. So you have to get to the story to them before the Friday of the previous week. So if you've got an event going on in a local newspaper, in a local area, then you probably want to contact them 2 weeks ahead to just make sure you make the deadline. Radio can be almost instant. I mean, I have pitched to radio at lunchtime and they put the client on, or put on the person in the afternoon. And the other thing is, if you're pitching to breakfast shows, be very careful, because they start working at about 4 or 5 in the morning. And I have been known to get phone calls from producers who at 5 o'clock in the morning, where they'll say, somebody's just had to drop out of our show and we need someone on at 6 o'clock. So, you know, would your client, or would you like to talk? And you're kind of half asleep, bleary eyed, going, oh my God, yeah, all right, okay. So radio can be very quick. Weekly magazines tend to work 3 to 6 weeks ahead. In fact, I probably think it more around the 6 week. And that's even things like New Idea and Woman's Day and the Weekly and things like that. They will be working quite far ahead. Monthly magazines can work even further ahead. So if you wanted to get something into, let me think of a monthly magazine, I don't know, Better Homes magazine, which comes out every month, then they are probably, where are we now? We're in January. They're probably already starting on the April-May issue. So, and then with bi-monthly and quarterly magazines, it can be even longer. So if it's a bi-monthly magazine, which actually means once every 2 months, not twice a month. I don't know why they say that, but it's true. Bi-monthly magazines, even now, might be working on the sort of, you know, starting to come into the July, you know, June, July issues. And quarterly magazines tend to work at least 1 issue ahead. So they're probably into the second quarter of this financial year, or maybe even the June, July issue. So just that's just to give you a little heads up in terms of lead times. So now I've got a question for you. What media are you going to target? Where do you see your business appearing? Or where would you like to see your business featured, or yourself featured, or whatever it is, or your products featured? So again, I'm going to shut up for a couple of minutes and see what you have to say. So there's always a little bit of a lag, so you hear my voice, but everything else is a little bit slower. So, okay, well, anyway, just make a note of it, because I can have a look at this afterwards, but I'm interested to know what sort of media you want to target. And that's media category. I mean, is it TV or radio? But it's also, is there a specific title or a specific show that you would love to target? But in order so that this doesn't go on forever and a day, I'm going to keep going now and move into the steps required. Oh, hang on. So Beck is saying she wants all businessy ones. The Fin Review, the Business and Entrepreneur sites and magazines. Yep, great. Deborah's looking for radio, local newspaper, national newspapers, and something like The Project. Now, Deb, The Project is actually pretty easy to approach, so you just have to make sure you've got a good angle for it. Deborah, I don't have much visual other than myself to interview. I'm not quite sure what your business is, but you may have something to demonstrate. Otherwise, you just need to make yourself sound very, very interesting in terms of being interviewed. And Chris is going business radio, SME blogs. Oh, sounds like you're targeting the same market I am, Chris. SME magazines and business news in the mainstream media. And Karen wants magazines and social media and bloggers. All very, very good and very viable media outlets, and all of them incredibly approachable. It's all very doable. Right, so how about I start telling you about the steps required, or what you're going to need to do to get some publicity. So this is just a little diagram that I've got to show you what we're going to cover. Getting ready, then doing it, and then what you do after you've done it. But let me take you through it bit by bit. So before you get started, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need to gather a few things together. You need to have a logo either for your company or for your product. And it's basically a low-res logo that you're going to insert into the document header, a little bit like letterhead. And what the journalist does is they look at the media release, and they nearly always look to see what the branding is on it, and that's who they think the article is about. I'll give you a little heads up on that. When I first started doing PR, I didn't know that, and I thought that so I used to put things out saying handle communications, and the West Australian featured one of our products for our clients one year and put in my phone number, And I can't tell, I mean, one thing I know is that the West Australian gets great results, because we had about 300 phone calls over the next week. And we couldn't take it out because it had been done in print. So we just had to live with it and say to our client, okay, tell us where people can get this, and when they call us, we'll let them know. But anyway, that's why you do a company logo or a product logo or whatever in the top. Then you need to have some sample products, or if you haven't got products, a trial, something that the journalist will be able to experience your business, whether it's touch and feel the product, or maybe try your online site, or maybe road test it. Then you always have to have the details for where to purchase. And I know this sounds silly, but a lot of people forget to do that. If you're not sure where they are, then you can just direct people to your website to have a look at stockists, or for your website, which will give you some breathing time to come up with a way people can purchase. So if it's a retail product and you've got a whole lot of retail outlets, I mean, I've even had clients say, just, you know, on their website, for stockists, ring this number, and that'll buy you some time as well. And they'll call you to say, where can I buy it? You need to have, and this is crucial, your website live and ready for scrutiny, because like in any other, you know, thing that we do nowadays, if you find out about something new, you're going to go on to Google and have a look at it. Now, the journalist will want to see your website probably when they're researching and when they're writing the story, and then they will definitely want their readers to be able to go there immediately after they've done the story. So if you have a business that's starting up a little while later, so say your business is going to start at the end of February, you could do a media release now, but you would need to say on it that this article shouldn't be published until the end of February. And again, they get very, very nervous, and they probably won't run the story because they're worried that their readers are going to, you know, come to a dead end, and then they get the phone calls going, why have you printed this story, and I can't get hold of the people. The other thing that you need to leave is some time. You'll probably need about 1 day to get started. That's your media release written, and sending it out to a whole lot of journalists individually. And then about between 1 and 3 hours a week, depending on how many you send out, to do your follow-up and follow up on the people that haven't responded to you. And then last but not, and certainly not least, let's be honest, is that you need to be prepared to put in the effort and to be motivated to do it. However, that is obviously not a financial cost, that's just an emotional cost. All right, so good photography is key, and I can't tell you how strongly I believe that. These are bloody awful photos of me, I have to say. It's not my favourite to look at a picture of myself, but these photos, which we had done for our business, the top ones are of myself and my original business partner, actually got us stories. They got articles written because they wanted us to have, because a lot of journalists, even in newspapers, want to see photos that they can put in to illustrate the story. So why is good photography key? Well, you need to show people, including the journalist that you're pitching to, what the product looks like, and ideally how it's being used, how to use it. So, and if it's a service, then you want people to you need something that kind of links it. They like having a visual. It means beautiful, professionally shot images. It is so worth you investing in some good quality images. You'll be able to use them 100 million other ways. You'll be able to use them in your advertising if you do decide to advertise, certainly on your website, in your product brochures, and anything else that you might have. But a good shot is really important. And if you don't have a product, then you can have a pic of the founders, which is like those shots of Simone and myself on the previous slide. If you've got a business or news story, and I'll tell you the reason why. When we launched Handle Your Own PR, we kind of walked the walk, exactly as we said. I've never advertised, I've only ever done publicity. And we got a lot of coverage in the beginning. And we had these shots taken, which I thought were hideous. But anyway, we sent it off to all the Herald Sun and the Sydney Morning Herald and whatever. And the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age agreed to do a story for us. And we got this great story. It was about 1/3 of a page back when the newspaper was broadsheet, when it was the big paper. And we were thrilled. And they put the photo in. And then a couple of weeks later, on a Monday, we ended up with like a half page. And the photo of us was about A4. I mean, I nearly died. And I rang the journalist and said, how come you ran the story again? And she said, well, Firstly, it was because it was on the weekend. The chief of staff that weekend was a new person and he didn't know the other story had written. And he was going around the office saying, I need a story with an image. Who's got a story with an image? And he noticed the pic of you two that was there on the, along with the story. And he said, okay, well, let's get those two women in. We'll run that story. So we got a double dip in some very, very influential media just because we had that photo. So again, my advice is get some photography done and it'll be worth it. Now, if you've got a product though, you definitely, and I'm sure it goes without saying that you realize that you need product shots, but there's no point having a shot done on your iPhone with a terrible background. You really want to get some good professional shots done. So if you're selling a product, these are the 3 types of shots that you need to have handy really before you get started on your PR. One is a straight product shot where the product is either on a white or a plain colored background and it's in its packaging. And that is kind of to show how it would look if someone went into a shop and was looking for it. So think about it that way. The next shot that you need is what they call a deep etched shot. And deep etched is really just means cutting out the outline from the background. So it's one of those shots that they do. You've probably seen them in magazines where they've got on the What's Hot page or Things We Love, those pictures of products, and that's the kind of shot that you'll need to be featured in those kind of magazines. And then the last but probably most important shot is the lifestyle shot, which is the one I was discussing on the previous slide. It's the showing the product being used or shown in its surroundings. If it's ornamental, then it can be done. If you've got an online business and you can take a shot and it would be worth it of someone looking over your shoulder at the website or something like that, then do that, or even just screen grabs. And then for fashion PR, it's always also worth having what they call a flat lay image, which is those shots that they take where they put scarves or jewelry or whatever on the floor on a white background and then shoot it from above. So it's kind of very popular for clothing and clothing shoots where they might have 15 different types of scarves or jewelry or trousers or t-shirts or whatever. That's the other kind of shot that you need. And it's mainly fashion stylists that are looking for those kind of what they call flat lay shots. Okay, so once you've got your photography done, we've touched on samples, and I just thought I'd give you a little bit more information about it. If you have a product, the journalist or producer will probably want to see the product and be able to touch it and feel it. And then if you have a service, the journalist may like to try it out. So make sure you allocate some samples to send out to the media after your initial approach, and only if they show interest. And the reason why I say that is it's sort of back in the old days, people used to put together what they called a media kit, and they would post it out with a sample of the product to all the journalists that they wanted to approach. And what happens is that 3 or 4 of those 15 or 20 that you've sent out are really interested and will do a story, and all the rest of them are going to give it to their friend, their neighbor, their child, or it's just going to sit on their desk gathering dust, because I learned my lesson the hard way, I guess. I used to do a whole lot of PR for DVDs, and I used to send them out willy-nilly to everyone, and I've got a couple of journalists coming back to me absolutely furious saying, do not send me unsolicited samples. And the rationale behind that is that if everybody does it, they get absolutely swamped. So my advice to you is to send an email out offering a sample to the journalist and telling them all about your product or your service, offering a sample and then asking them if they're interested to let you know. And then when you're sending them out to journalists, you're sending them out to people that are interested in running a story. And it also sort of, gives you a little bit of a relationship thing going on. So don't expect to get samples back unless they're of very high value though. So what I say to people is, I guess if I was doing a campaign, I'd probably allow 20 units to send out to journalists, depending on what they are. But if it's something really expensive, like say a washing machine or a pram or very expensive jewelry that you're sending out for a photo shoot, and you want it sent back to you, then make it easy for the journalist to get it back to you. So if it's something like that, send it out with an already filled out express post bag to send it back, or a courier, those courier, what are they called, dockets, already filled out so that they can stick it on and send it back to you. You just want to make it as easy as possible for the journalist to get it back to you. If you think a lot of those shoots might have 20, 30, 50 products in them anyway. So for them to stay on top of it and remember who goes to who, you're much safer off giving them something that they can easily get it back to you from. The other thing, if it's a really high cost item, is to consider having one as a sample that you send from one journalist to another to try out. So we've done this with prams before, because a pram is, $1,500 to $1,800. So we'd send it to one magazine, say Practical Parenting, and they would do a road test on it, and they'd see it and they'd try out all the gadgets, and then they'd either send it back to us and we'd send it to another journalist, or we would give them a docket that then sent it on to the next person. Now, they are totally understanding. Journalists understand you don't have enough money to be throwing around those sorts of items to everyone. They're totally cool with it. But again, it's just making sure that you make it really easy for them. Okay, so next, let's talk about media releases. So I guess one of the things that you need to know is that attention grabbing, which means something that's kind of got something interesting in the heading, it's well constructed, and it's got good grammar and spelling, should get a journalist's interest. And what I always say is a bit like if you were talking to your best friend, sound excited when you're writing the media release. You need to sort of make it all sound a bit zhuzhy and fabulous. And that way the journalist will start going, oh, maybe they'll prick up their ears and sit a little bit higher in their chair and go, oh, let me hear more about this. A media release is ideally one A4 page of text and images, which is specifically true of product releases. However, if you've got a business story, you might need to go to a couple of pages, which is fine, but it's not a 6-page document. 2 pages is the absolute maximum. If they want more information, they'll call you anyway. You need to clearly communicate your key messages and write for the end reader or the end watcher or listener. What I mean with that is in the first paragraph, you really need to get across what the whole concept is behind that media release, because the journalist may not read any further than that first paragraph. And that you need to write, you're not writing your media release to the journalist. It's not for them to read, it's for their end readers. You've got to imagine that they may just, which they might just, cut and paste the whole thing, stick it into their magazine and print it. So you need to speak in the language and the tone and talk in as if you're talking to you, as in the end reader or the end viewer of the show, not to the journalist. And the other thing when you write a media release is include low-res photographs. When I say low-res, I would say it's under a megabyte. And the reason for that is if you send high-res files, it just clogs up the journalist database, because journalists are getting roughly between, say, 100 and 200 emails a day, pitching ideas to them. So if you clog up their inbox, they'll just delete it. They won't even look at it. They'll just go, whoa, that's 10 meg, I'm getting rid of it. So low-res photographs in your release, and then you say at the end of the media release, if you'd like high-res images, let me know and I'll send it to you. And then if they're going to print it, they'll send it to you. And last but not least, to make sure you cover all the following points in every media release that you write, you need to say what it is that you're selling, why you're selling it, or what problem it solves, or why you came up with the idea, or how it works, whatever, where it's available, and what it costs. So those are kind of the golden rules of every media release. And what not to include in a media release, and just don't bother, is any ads that you've done. I don't care how great your ad is or how clearly it explains what your product or service is. Do not include ads. Editorial departments in magazines and newspaper media outlets in general are kept very separate from the advertising departments. They see themselves as not being influenced by kind of commercial aspects of the business. So if you send a journalist with your media release and say, have a look at the ad, it tells you some more details, they'll just flick it straight onto the advertising department, and that's it, you've lost your chance. The other thing I would suggest is that you don't include any clippings from other media. And again, it doesn't matter how well it's been explained by another journalist. If one journalist sees that another journalist has done the story, then they're probably going to say, this is an old story, it's already been covered, I'm not interested. So even if you've had 15 stories, they don't have to know that. You don't need to tell them that. You just keep that to yourself. Don't bother sending in the body copy. I'm talking about logos, trademarks, copyright symbols. I know that they're hard to get. I know that it means it's a registered trademark or whatever. But you have probably, think about it, have you ever read a magazine or a newspaper that's got a little R or a little C above the name of the product or service? They're just not going to do it, so don't bother. Don't bother really putting in any customer testimonials unless they're from someone with a really high profile, because all journalists, like all of us, know that you can get anyone to say something nice about your business, particularly if it's someone close to you. And so they don't have a lot of integrity. They're great for your website, they're great for endorsements on that kind of thing, but in terms of a media release, saying, you know, my customer thinks my product's fantastic, or this shop's fantastic, or this restaurant's fantastic, ain't going to really cut the mustard with the journalist. And then the last but not least, I would say speak in really simple terms. The best way of describing it would be, in your media release, imagine you're describing your business or your service to your mother. And I say that only because my mother goes, oh my God, it's all too complicated. You've got to talk in really basic English. There is no point putting jargon or slang in, unless you are maybe, you know, addressing, you're writing for an industry magazine or newspaper. But if you want something that's going out to the general public, or to people that aren't necessarily familiar with your particular industry or your particular product, then use a conversational tone as if you're telling your best friend or your mother all about it. And don't start getting overly complicated and using jargon or slang or particularly technical language, because it just won't make any difference. Okay, well, if I haven't exhausted you by now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to come up with an angle that a journalist might like. Now, we've only got limited time today, so I can't go through this in any huge amount of detail. I just want to give you an idea of it. I'm going to talk about my boot camp at the end of this session. In something like that, where I've got a lot more time to talk to you, I can help you. But also on my website, I do have suggestions. So you can have a look at handleyourownpr.com.au, and we have got a list of media-friendly angles, but I'll run you through a few of them anyway. If your product is new or your business is new, then already you're in with a really good chance. All journalists are looking for something new. So as long as you can give it a new spin, or it's a new product on the market, then you're in with a pretty good chance straight away. Another angle that you can use is whether it's topical. So does it relate to a popular TV show? You know, is it something you could relate to MasterChef or Biggest Loser, or, you know, The Voice, or anything like that? Or is it, can it be related to a news story? Is it something, you know, I mean, is it something about that you could relate to David Bowie or Alan Rickman? Is it something that you could relate to, God forbid, you know, terrorism, or I don't know, anything political? Just think about what's in the news at the moment, and is there a link that you can draw between your media release and something that's trending at the moment? Because that's the kind of thing that journalists will prick their ears up and kind of go, oh yeah, that's interesting. The other thing is celebrities. Now, I just want you to be very careful with that. A lot of people, especially if you've got a product, like to send it out to celebrities to get them to try it. The celebrity may accept and may even send you back a thank you note, but you've got to be really careful, because you can't use their name unless you've got their permission to use their name. So even if they absolutely love your product and they say thank you very much, and I've had, you know, we've sent things to Toni Collette and Kate Blanchett and all sorts of high profile people, but to use their name and say as used by, or, you know, Kate Blanchett really loves my product, you can't do that unless you ask their permission. And 9 times out of 10, those kind of celebrities are used to be paid a lot of money, and they'll want money for it. So just be careful. Having said that, if you've got a very distinctive looking product that you think that maybe a celebrity would use outside, so for instance, I've done it with prams, and there's a chance that the paparazzi might shoot them using it, and that it's distinctive enough that you're going to be able to use that paparazzi shot to show people that celebrities love your product, then go for it. Or if you've got a bit of budget to pay a celebrity to endorse it, but just be very careful of that. Another thing is an interesting backstory. Has something happened in your life that made you change from, you know, having a corporate career to maybe moving into aromatherapy or something? Has there been a life-changing moment? Did something happen that made you do an about turn and start this business? Because that's always interesting to journalists. There might be an unusual link, and I love my examples of this. I don't know why it makes me laugh, but are you a bald hairdresser? Quite funny. Or are you a Japanese person running an Indian restaurant? Or are you a very small person selling tall people's clothes? You know, whatever it might be. But if there's some humor or an unusual link between your business and you, then you can often make it newsworthy. The next one is probably the strongest angle that I think that you can do, which is to offer tips and advice to people. Kind of positions you as an expert and is a great way to get exposure. So, for instance, if you've got, we had a client who was selling beds, and it was just like, you know, the best different types of beds for different sleeping positions. So you don't have to be like a super expert. You certainly don't need to have academic qualifications, just experience in a certain field. So for instance, I telling you how to do PR. Well, if I'm doing articles for Handle Your Own PR and I'm trying to get publicity and I can't get a straight one about me or about the business, then I'll offer some tips or advice to a business magazine, and they'll nearly always take it. And at the bottom, they'll say, as written by Jules Brooke, Handle Your Own PR, and there'll be a link to my website. And that's good enough for me. And then, of course, is it innovative is also very newsworthy. Is it a world first or an Australian first? Is it particularly quirky or clever? Something that makes it stand out from the crowd, and the journalists should like that too. Okay, now if you have any questions, of course, keep writing them in the chat window. Now, I know I'm galloping through this, but we've got a lot to cover in a short amount of time. So now I want to talk to you about doing it, how to actually do PR. So the first thing is that you're going to need some media contacts, and there are two ways you can do it. You can either create your own list or you can buy one. So to create your own list, you need to do some research, researching recent articles or stories in the media that you're targeting. Then you need to note the name of the journalist and their contact details if you can find them. Or you can ring the media outlet, because always when you speak to reception at almost any media outlet, they'll be happy to give you a journalist or producer's the media outlet, or you can find it on Google. Some places like News Limited, I know with most of the journalists, if you look at anything on a News Limited site, you can normally click on the journalist's name if there's a byline, and that'll immediately generate an email to that journalist. So that's another way of doing it. But ultimately, you're going to have to track down the name, email address, and phone number for every title and or for every journalist on your list, which you know is possible, but it just takes a long time, but it is free. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it, and I have to admit that I have a vested interest in it because I sell media contact lists, is that you can buy one. And of course, the benefits of buying a quality, up-to-date media list ensures that your media release will reach interested journalists. I guess I say that because on our site, we offer the journalists an opportunity to opt out. So we say these are going to be small businesses contacting you, not PR people. If you're interested, then you might get a story before any other media outlet, but it's not going to be a professional. And some journalists say, no, I'm not interested, and we take them off our list. And the ones that are on our list are the ones who've all said, yep, I'm more than happy for someone to approach me. You'll also have personalized email addresses for the majority of the media outlets listed. So that means you have Mary at News Limited rather than editorial at News Limited. You save yourself obviously loads and loads of time and loads of aggravation. And most of our media contact lists on Handle Your Own PR cost less than $250. We've only got one that's more than that, and that is a list of about 135 business journalists across the country. And then the other benefit, of course, is that you can start your campaign today. Sorry, I just see there's a message here from Anna. For online sites, e.g. Daily Life, would you contact the deputy editor or the editor? I would actually contact either, Anna. The editor is across everything, but normally if they're too busy, the deputy editor is the person that you would go to. And quite frankly, the two of them would be talking every day anyway. So if you've got either name, possibly the editor is going to be slightly more busy. But then if it's Daily Life, an online site, I doubt it. I'd say they sit beside each other in the same room. So you could probably do either of them. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the best ways to contact the media. And different media are slightly different in the ways that you need to contact them. So magazine editors, I always would email them first. They are very busy, and then follow it up with a phone call. Having said that, if there's something a magazine you really want, then give them a call. But basically, I would do my initial approach via email. Web editors and bloggers, you have no option. It's pretty much, they don't even give out most of their phone numbers, so it's email only. News editors, which is TV news and newspapers, always call first. Pitch them the story. You've got to have a nice, you're going to have 2 or 3 minutes to tell them what it's about. And then if they're interested, they're going to say, send me an email with more information, which is why even if it is news media and you want to be interviewed, it's always worth having a media release because it's kind of just like an information sheet you can send off immediately. And with radio and TV producers, you also need to call them first and then follow it up with an email. But with all media, you want to, before you launch into anything, if you're talking to them on the phone, the first thing you need to ask is this a good time? Are you on deadline? Because if they are, they'll just switch off and they're not going to be very receptive at all to your call. But the fact that you've asked them, they often say, look, I am on deadline. Can you call me tomorrow? Or can you call me after 3 or whatever it might be? So, but just the first words that come out of my mouth are, is this a good time to call? Every single time. Okay, so the email protocol is what I'm talking about, is for the email that you send out with the media release. So this is, you kind of do a little small introduction and then I cut and paste my media release into the body of the email. So what you need to think about is a catchy subject line. Now, I only say that because I had one of my DIY PR people said, is it okay to say story pitch to Herald Sun? And I said, well, would you open it if something came like that? So try and make it funny or clever. And if you get stuck, one of the things that I do is just use the heading, the headline that you've come up with for your media release, because you've probably thought about that quite carefully, and then put that into the subject line as well on the email. Then you want to make sure that it's personalized, as in you want to say, hi Mary, hi Ben, hi whoever. Journalists are very, very touchy about being BCC'd into something. So you really want to, address it to them directly. Choose only one person per media outlet if you're offering an exclusive. If you send it to more than one, then make it up. But if it's a news story, then as opposed to a product or a piece of fluff, then you really need to only offer it to one person at each media outlet. So you might offer it to the Sydney Morning Herald and the Daily Telegraph and, I don't know, another one, but the first one that comes back to you and says, I'm interested, can I have an exclusive? You're going to have to pull back on the others and not send it to anyone else until they've come back to you and said, yes, they're going to run it or no, they're not. Having said that, you can also say to them, how long do you want it for? Because I want to send it out to other people. And I think 2 or 3 days is more than reasonable. I always copy and paste the release into my body of my email. And the only reason for that is it's one less click for the journalist. And also, if you've got a photo, as per my advice, then they get a nice big photo that opens up straight away. And underneath it is a whole lot of information about what it is that you're trying to tell them. Make sure, however, that it's a very low resolution version of your image that should sit in the email. You certainly don't want to clog up their inbox. And in the intro, then you write a short, snappy paragraph that sort of says something like, hi, Mary, please find, or I've got this great new business. It's servicing the hospitality industry. It's an innovative new way of pouring cocktails. Please see the media release below and attached, and call me or contact me if you would like high-res images or a sample, or to talk to me in more detail. Something like that. So it's only 2 or 3 lines. Okay, and then once you've sent it all out, what you're left with is either journalists who've responded to you saying, great, can I have some more information, in which case you know that they're interested, or resounding silence. And if there's resounding silence, then you need to do what they call following up, which is the industry term for contacting the media that have already received your release and encouraging them to give you the editorial coverage that you want, which is really one of the most crucial parts of the campaign, because you might pick up, I don't know, 1/3 of any coverage in that initial email out to people, and then when you do some follow-up, you'll get almost twice as much. Not always, because there's no hard and fast rules, but it is really important. So remember that journalists and editors receive hundreds of emails every day. So really, it's just a gentle reminder to make sure that they've seen it. So what I tend to do is within a week of sending out the first one, I tend to do the follow-up so that it's reasonably fresh. I personalize it again. And what I do is I forward the original email with a little note that just says, hi, just checking you saw this and was wondering if you were interested, or something similar. Or if it's something I really, really want to get into, I might call them and say, did you see it? I sent it on Wednesday at such and such a time. And they'll say, no, I didn't. And you go, okay, what if I send it again now? And they go, great, I'll look out for it. Or the other thing that they can do is, you know, ask you on the spot for more details about it, and then you follow it up with more emails. Or, you know, if you're in the same state, you could arrange to meet them for a coffee, whatever it might be. Okay, so following up, absolutely crucial. And then once you've done that, let's assume that you've got some coverage now, because I reckon, you know, most people can at some stage. Always remember to thank any journalist or editor who gives you a mention. They don't have to do it. They don't have to write stories for you. And they're doing you a big favor in the end, aren't they? Because, you know, that should make a big difference to your business. So make sure you show your appreciation. And you'll also stand out, because most people don't do that, which is incredibly rude, I think. I've had a few journalists say to me, it's amazing how people are all over me like a rash at the beginning when they want the story done. And as soon as I say we're running the story, I never hear from them again. Well, you know, don't be that person. Go back to them and tell them thank you. And maybe if it's made a difference to your business, you could say, wow, you know, we were inundated with calls that day, or we had a real spike in website visits, or, you know, we sold more that week than we'd ever sold before, or whatever. The journalists love to hear that their story has an impact. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is clippings. Now, clippings are the industry term. It's just the old-fashioned way of calling. It's an excerpt or a copy of what it is, the coverage that's been done. So, and it's taken from the old-fashioned way that you'd actually clip it out of a newspaper or cut it out of a newspaper. But always, if someone says they're going to run a story, ask for a copy of the interview or the article. Radio producers are nearly always happy you'll find that with newspapers, particularly daily newspapers, they will tell you when it's going to appear, and they expect you to get a hold of that newspaper yourself. If it's an interstate newspaper, then you can normally ring the front desk and buy a back copy, and they'll post it to you. And if it's TV, they often don't like to hand it. They used to send you a CD with the visuals on it. These days, they post it up on their website, and they will ask you to link it back to their website, which they're more than happy to do. But yeah, just be aware as well that once they have published it, the content is theirs, not yours. It's a weird sort of scenario, especially if it's about you or your life. But you can't just take it and plop it up on social media without asking their permission for it. Okay, mediators between advertising and publicity, because you can't really work an ad. If you get an ad, then once the ad has appeared, there's not a lot you can do with it. You can't I mean, there's no point really putting it up on social media. But if you get an article about yourself or an interview, there's heaps you can do. So one of the first things, obviously, is that you would post it up on your website, and then out in your social media channels. I mean, gosh, it's fantastic to be able to go out on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever and say, look at this great article that appeared today in such and such a media. You might like to blog about it, or just post it up on your blog with a link maybe to the original article. If you send out newsletters, then why not include it in a newsletter, either as an image, or you can do a link to it. I don't know why I've written advertising space, but anyway, it's more space in your shop or office. So if you're a restaurant or a cafe or whatever, then you're used to seeing little articles where they've stuck it to the window at the front. But the same thing in your office, stick it in a frame and put it in the meeting room. It's always good for people to be able to see that you're attracting publicity to your business. And one of the great benefits of publicity as well is that PR is fantastic for SEO. Google loves inbound links from reputable, what they call reputable sites, which are sites with big followers. So media is perfect for that. And the more popular the media outlet, the better it'll work for you. For instance, daily metro newspapers are ranked really highly by Google. In fact, if you Google handle your own PR, I think it's still on the first page or the beginning of the second page that you'll get an article. Well, the article I mentioned that was written about in 2009 or 2010 about handling your own and it's you get good SEO is to try to ensure that you get the web address of your business in an article rather than just the business name. So somewhere in that article, you want www.handleyourownpr.com.au or whatever your website address is actually written in the article. And I guess I did a recent story for News Limited. It was an article they were doing on happiness. And I know the journalist, and she said, let's say that what makes you happy is work, and that way I'll be able to promote your business for you. So I said, great, done deal. But I said to her, please don't write handle your own PR. Please put www. The web address, which she did. And I got all the inbound links from the Herald Sun and Adelaide Now, because most News Limited stories do get syndicated around the country. So it was just a beautiful bit of publicity for very, very little, and all because I said, please can you put the actual web address. So it gave us great SEO, and that's really what you want. Okay, now we've just got time for some questions. Just put them in the chat box if you have any questions for me, and I will try and answer them. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about my boot camp, and which obviously is an opportunity for me to give you much more in-depth kind of insights into how you run your own PR campaign, and they're live, so I can actually help you on your own business. But anyway, Deborah says, how long after sending the email should you follow up? I normally try to follow up within a week, so within 4 to 5 business days, Deb. That's kind of a good rule of thumb. It's all right, we're just has anyone for the editor but only have a contact page? Well, then you really do have to contact them that way. Sometimes on some of my media contact lists, I have got the editor's details. Often they don't put it on the site, but they might make it available for the media. But otherwise, you just contact them via the contact page. But again, you still need your media. You still need to have your paragraph that's really clever. You still need to have your photography ready to go. You still need to have your media release ready to send them if they're interested in it. Okay. All right, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more. All right, so let me now tell you a little bit about the boot camp. And if anyone posts up questions, I'm sure Karina will nudge me in the ribs very hard and I can keep answering them. But basically, I guess from Handle Your Own PR, I realize we still have a long way to go, because media lists and online tips are only part of the problem, as I mentioned earlier. And I think mainly with a lot of people, it's too daunting to do it yourself. You want to be able to do it either in a group or with someone holding your hand. And of course, I can do lectures until the cows come home, but in the end, there are limitations to them. There's not enough time. They're normally half an hour, an hour. At the end of it, people go, yep, okay, I'm ready. And then, they go home and they get caught up with their life and they don't do anything about it. There's no support group if you're holding lectures. And obviously, you're limited to where you can host it or where you can do the talk in the first place. So the solution, what we decided, was to start a Handle Your Own PR bootcamp online. And what it is, it's 6 weeks where I take you through an hour a week, and we talk about get to the other people's questions. We also on the bootcamp give you access to all the training materials, so you get the slides for each week, and you also get access to the key ebooks that are relevant each week that are available in our online store. And because I want it to be a really practical course, I give you weekly exercises so that in theory, if you're ready to go, then during the course you'll start doing your PR, and I can help you and the group can help you with any issues that come up while you're doing it. And if you are about to launch, then it gets you all set up and ready to go. So it gives you a media list, a media release, you understand how to do it, and you're ready to go, you know, as soon as you're ready to launch. It can be ideas or things that we see that might be useful for people. We put up lots of charts and bits and bobs on that one. So the boot camp is $1,100 plus GST, and it is really worth it. I mean, you'll get a hell of a lot more than $1,000 worth of value out of it, because I'm teaching you skills that you will then be able to do over and over and over again. But today, oh, and we've got the first person to sign up tonight, but actually it's not tonight, it's today. But anyway, same thing. We've got a bonus offer. So the first person who signs up today is going to get a free personal one-on-one session with me for an hour or up to an hour to discuss what your business goals are, what you want the PR to do, and what angles and media might be right for you. And anybody else who signs up today can have 40% off a 1 hour session with me. So instead of 1,100, we're going to give you a 25% discount, so only 825, which I think is really, really good value for the amount of time that you're going to get with me. But there's more. I'm also going to, during the course of the boot camp, you can choose any media list that you want, and I'll give it to you for free. And if you want more than one, I'll give you 20% off any other ones. So basically, by the end of the boot camp, you will have everything ready to go, and you'll be off and running. And on our media contact list, we have over 80 of them to choose from, and over 2,600 contacts. And we do talk to these journalists every quarter. So every 3 months, I'm in contact, checking that they're happy to be on the list and that they're still in the places that they say they are. So that is really important. So again, as I said, only $825. So if you're wondering whether you should start the boot camp because your business or product isn't ready yet, then as I said, do it, because it's never too early to prepare, and that way you'll be ready to go. And you'll also understand the lead times and how the media works. So if you've got as I said, a product, even if you're launching in July, you're still, if you wanted to get into, say, some of the quarterly magazines, it would be worth going out to them now. So there's lots of different ways of doing it, and I'm not going to tell you all the details now, but the reality is that 6 weeks will go by very quickly, especially if you've never prepared for PR before. And you've got to do things like organize your photography, get some quotes together, get your samples together, etc., etc. And if you haven't written a media release might be procrastinating. The other thing, though, that and the boot camp, the next boot camp is starting on Monday, the 8th of February. So it's going to go on Monday nights at 8 o'clock. And really, let me give you a little example. And I've just been interviewing some previous boot campers so that I've got testimonials. And one of them was for a business called Lolly Linen, a woman called Sue Johnson, who's fantastic, but her business closed. She had to, I don't even know how to say this, but basically halfway through the boot camp, she had a problem with her business, had to close it down and set up a new one. I mean, it was all very dramatic. So when I was interviewing her this morning, I was saying, how did you fit in all the information and how did you go? And she said it was just really, really useful to know today. So she knew that it was going to be a little bit of time before the website launched, but she wanted to get cracking on getting coverage. So what she did was she went to some monthly magazines and she booked in a couple of promotions and an article, and in fact had a story that came out yesterday on the same day that she launched, because she had contacted them in December. So, you know, having those kind of insights and understanding how the media works will really help you if you are setting up a new business or you want to launch the business. Another thing that another boot camper told me, which I absolutely loved, obviously, is that they had actually been Handle Your Own PR customers a couple of years ago. and they had bought some lists, and we didn't understand that you have to find a good story angle, and so what we did was we just sent out a media release telling the journalists how fantastic our business was, and not one person was interested. And now, since they've done the course, I think they've had something like 4 or 5 articles already. It was really amazing results, so that was great. Okay, and then another thing that you might be wondering is whether you should just purchase a one-on-one session with me rather than doing the boot camp. You can, and of course I'm certainly not going to stop you, but if you think that you're advanced on your journey, which is fine if you think you know what you're doing, but sorry, I have absolutely no idea. Karina's handed me a note and it's completely thrown me. Sorry. Oh yes, but if you do the boot camp, not only do you get 6 hours with me instead of an hour, so it's a lot more value. You also get the closed Facebook group, and I am on that all day, every day. I'm a terrible Facebook junkie, I have to admit. So you know, people post all through the last boot camp. People were posting their questions and coverage and maybe examples of the photographs that they'd done, so we could pick which ones. We had lots of people asking questions that, you know, related to other people asking the same questions, so everyone learned at the same time and learned from each other. So it can be really valuable. It's a really, you know, I think that it's a great thing to do, and I love teaching people in a small group. So please join me. And as I said, how can you resist? The next boot camp starts on the 8th of February. So if you want to get ready for a big 2016, then sign up. But tell you, said, and I just thought it was beautiful. She put it up on our Facebook page a couple of days ago, but she said, attending the course has been the best thing I've done for my business. Jules and Karina give you all the tools to get you started. I recommend this boot camp to anyone who wants to understand how the media works and how to get your brand out there yourself. And she, who is just a gorgeous woman, did everything that I told her. And I think, so we finished the boot camp on the 17th of December. I think she's now got 5 articles either appeared or appearing in the next month or so, and she's literally on fire. She just yesterday, she contacted me to say she's managed to get on the lifestyle channel as well. So, you know, if you want to know how to get that media coverage, then come along to the boot camp. I want to teach you. Okay, I think that's just about it, guys. So, yeah, I hope I'm going to see you on the boot camp. Otherwise, I really hope you found today valuable. I've loved telling you a little bit about what I know, and I look forward to being able to tell you more or to see you at another time. And good luck with your publicity. I really hope you get some great coverage this year, and that you give it a try, because it's really worth it. But on that note, I am going to say, oh, I tell you what, I'm just going to show you my face so you know I'm real. Hello. Oh, God, that's an awful photo. Anyway, bye, everyone. Thanks for coming. Bye.